Happy Monday to everyone. Welcome to another episode of Manah Conversations. Today we'll be talking about adulting stressors. Just to quickly what we mean by this theme is the fact that stress is something all of us experience at every stage of life, but especially for individuals who are transitioning from the adolescent stage to into adulthood, that cusp in between where you are not entirely an adult, so therefore not as wise, neither are you a teenager, where where there is a bit more understanding of the world around you and the decisions and choices that you make. So usually what happens during this transition is that a lot of us get caught up in what we are meant to do when it comes to our responsibilities, which is not just limited to our education anymore, but more likely that you're looking at ways to grow your career. There are certain professional networking or professional tasks that you are meant to do in order to progress in life. Add to that the fact that we are yet to earn and make a living for ourselves. We're trying to get out of our parents' house so we can be more independent. These are my own concerns, but I have interacted with many people who are in this cusp of transitioning from adolescent to adulthood who are facing even more stressors. So today's conversation is going to specifically focus on young adults who are new to adulting and the kind of stressors that we face. Having this conversation, I'm actually happy to invite someone with a healthcare challenge. She is a certified mindfulness coach. She's also a stress resilience coach who is here to help us not only recognize whether we are experiencing the stress, but she's also able to support us with certain strategies, things that you and I as laymen can do as a way to prevent reaching the burnout stage or reaching the point where you are unable to meet with your daily responsibilities and adult as you should. Um, so while we have this going on, and quickly sort of set the pace that we may not be able to invite you to the conversation. However, we would want to make it relevant for you. So if you have any queries regarding the topic in mind, if you need any clarity on how you can identify your own stressors or how you can manage them, feel free to ask your queries. We'll definitely address them during the conversation. A big shout out to whoever has joined the conversation as of now. Hello, hi Vidya. I love
Hi
your
Neha.
background. Okay, so it took a few minutes, I would say, when I gave the context and before having you join us. So just to quickly reiterate a little bit about our guest for today. Vidya is a certified mindfulness practitioner and a stress resilience coach. And today she's going to help us understand, especially for young adults, those who are new to adulting, what would stress look like for each of us and how we can best manage the stress. Before we start with that, I want to check with you. I think I have a fair understanding of why we are looking at stress in adulthood. I would want to hear your views on, why this topic actually struck a chord in you so much so that I think you're also making a program on it to offer to the larger communities. So why this population and why specifically stress?
Yes, adulthood is a phase where people face a lot of challenges. So it's a phase where there's one goes through a lot of changes in life, right? It could be in terms of establishing themselves in a career or changing jobs, getting into relationships, right? Moving into a new city, uh, being on their own, being alone, not having anybody to talk, a lot of inhibitions to open up to people about their not so nice aspects. That got me inclined to look at stress in adults, though stress is a commonality in all age groups.
And I think it's a very accurate, appropriate inclusion, I would say, because having gone through it recently, I think that is the wrong tense. It's a present continuous tense. So I'm still going through that phase where I'm trying to figure out adulting, and there are a lot of other changes, whether it is, within my body, whether it is the societal expectations of certain milestones we have to reach. So I'm actually in the midst of experiencing all of that. And as a professional, I have a fair idea of where it is bordering to stress, and in fact, more than some cases where it is getting into an extremely stressful situation. For the benefit of our viewers, however, if you could give certain aspects or maybe certain behavioral traits or thought processes that could indicate, that would help them recognize that they are in fact experiencing stress, that would be helpful.
Okay, stress. It's very important that we recognize, adults recognize symptoms of stress, in the early stages itself, because it's not, stress is a part of life. We cannot really avoid it, but it's important to recognize where we are getting ruled by stress. That's very important. So that helps us to take action, some preventive action, or in terms of therapy, or in terms of anything, even if it gets too much, if it gets to a point where they cannot handle it anymore, or it's disrupting their functionality. It's very important to recognize it, because of how it impacts their life. Stress, it shows up in many ways. Like there could be racing thoughts, palpitations, digestion issues, sweating too often, inability to think clearly, a lot of confusion in making decisions, inability to focus. So there are many ways in which stress plays on us. It's important to recognize um, stress well in advance, especially when it is repeating often. It's not a one-off thing. Okay, when we are able to cope up with it, it's okay. But then when it keeps repeating, it becomes chronic.
So I definitely want to take a pause here and tell our viewers or whoever would be seeing this video after that, if you were able to relate to any of the signs that Vidya just shared, the physiological signs especially, more often than not, the emotional challenges or experiences you're going through does manifest as physical signs. And that usually happens when it not necessarily reaching the breaking point, but it does mean that you have been experiencing it for quite some time, which is really impacting, all of your body and its elements.
So there are some more ways. I would like to talk about some more signs of stress. Like there could be, it's possible that sometimes we don't recognize that we are impacted by stress as much, but people around can give us indications. For example, if we are show anger too often, if we show frustration too often, then others could also give us that feedback, and that can be taken as a cue to reflect on whether it is actually impacting us emotionally.
Yes, yes. Thanks for adding on to that, Vidya. But yes, if any of you are able to relate to what our guest has shared so far, I think it's worth to sort of take a pause or take a step back and um, identify, where you've been experiencing this, acknowledge the fact that you may be undergoing stress, and then look for means from there on, which we'll be getting into right now. For the benefit of our audience, again, especially keeping in mind the fact that we have young adults or those in early adulthood who, at least for the sake of this conversation, that's the demographic I'd want to focus on. So keeping them in mind, what are some um, easily done strategies that maybe even as laymen, you and I could make use of to manage these kind of experiences and to not let it escalate into something worse?
Okay, so we can inculcate some practices so that we make time for coping up with stress and not let it accumulate. For example, breathing is something that we do. We don't really consciously think of breathing. So we can use breath as an anchor to center our focus. So I like to call it PCR technique. PCR is basically pause, just stop when you feel too overwhelmed, or even when you don't feel overwhelmed. Maybe allocate some time during the day to just stop for a few moments, pause, calm, and reflect. Pause, just take about 5 minutes or 10 minutes and allow your breath to settle to its natural rhythm first of all, and then reflect. So, what is it that I'm stressed about? We can use journaling as one of the techniques to express ourselves, because it's better that if we are too confused or not able to comprehend what's happening, we can actually put our thoughts on paper, which is a very effective way. Or if we don't like journaling, we can also just take a few moments to reflect on what my mind is trying to tell me. It could be some negative self talk, or it could be something unpleasant that's happened during the day. What in whatever intensity the stress is, and see whether it is real, or it's something that is irrational. Am I too worried about the future, or I'm coming to some conclusions based on how it looked just in that moment? So what is the merit in that thought? So breath is something that we can use to center ourselves and then take it forward by way of reflecting on that. That is one way. We can also talk to a nurturing figure, someone, maybe a friend or a counselor, if we need to do that, if we need to talk. In that way, we can actually honor our feelings and express how we feel. There are times when a person feels overwhelmed, he doesn't find anyone that he can confide in. So, a non judgmental way of being heard is very, very important. So, if we cannot confide in anyone in our close circle, we can actually talk to someone. I think even Manah has this Let's Talk initiative. We can just pick up a phone and talk to someone who can be empathetic and not judge us. And another thing which we can readily use is looking at what went well for us during the day. Kindness actually combats judgment. Now, we are always having this negative self-talk, either for ourselves or when it comes to what we expect from others. So when we have this approach of kindness, it not only combats the negative self-talk that we have, it also goes past that. It creates positive feelings. And from there, we can use that state, look at how we handle whatever is ahead of us, maybe something which is challenging. So, for example, if a person is looking at a project as a very, very challenging project or an exam, how can he handle that? By looking at what is what is nice about this. What do I have in this for me? It could be career growth, or it could be a certification, it could be more time for the family or some learnings. When he looks at the wins in that aspect, a gratification mode, that puts him in a better state rather than looking at it as something that I cannot step up to. Kindness and gratitude, it's not an overnight change. It needs practice to put us in a zone where we can make it a part of ourselves.
I do quickly want to reiterate on the strategies that you shared, especially those who are experiencing signs of stress, as explained by Vidya here. One thing you can do is the PCR method, where you use the power of breath, which I couldn't agree more on that point. You use the power of your breath to stop yourself and take a pause from the regular task that you may be doing. Take some time to calm yourself down and perhaps reflect on the entire day. Again, I think this method need not be used only when you feel stressed. I think it is a very healthy practice to have regardless. In fact, it does wonders when it comes to preventing any extremely stressful situations. So that is one thing. There's also the positive self-talk, which I have preached many a times. And I think it's sometimes difficult to perhaps implement it, but that's exactly when, I guess, Vidya, that's exactly when we make sort of a conscious effort in doing that. Especially during tough times, that the habit then comes in handy to steer our mind in a certain direction away from the very likely negative self-talk that happens. And
Absolutely.
of course, leaning on the social support that you have either in your immediate circle, if possible. If not, there are professionals and resources in place that you can reach out to, where you have that safe space, and a space where you wouldn't be judged on what you are saying, but you would be supported and guided with the experiences that you are having, quite simply put. Thank you so much, Vidya. I think those pointers were very helpful. Are there any uh, takeaway thoughts that you would like our viewers to have before we end the conversation?
Mental health is as important as physical health. In fact, both are connected.
I
Okay,
did not ask her to say this, by the way.
I think there's sufficient research on the subject to show that well-being is not just about the physical. In fact, even the physiological health gets affected if mental health is affected. Even if someone does not understand mental health, it's easy for someone to talk about that, but unless I think this is something that people pay attention to when things go wrong. But I would say, even if you don't understand mental health, and if you're focused on physical health, please take care of your mental health. That's and it is not um, last 2 years the way things have been all over the world. We've learned a lot because of the experience we've had. It's not just something that we asked for. We understood how we don't have control over all situations. There are some things where we can take control of. There's a lot that we don't have control of. In that case, it's important to tap into our own body, our emotions, our thoughts, and our behavior. If we take care of these things through self-care, we talk about stress resilience, but in essence, it's only self-care. So while we have this fitness activities for physical health, it's also important that we do some fitness activities for our emotional well-being too. So whether you understand it or not, it does not harm to do some self-care. It's not much to just devote about 10 minutes of our time, one for coping mechanism for the stress that we have experienced during the day. In addition, it's also building our ability to deal with the challenges. So it works both ways. Build your resilience for your own good. That's all. That's
I
all.
don't think I could have put it in better terms myself. Thanks a ton, Vidya, for taking the time out for joining us. Vidya has also been our avid participant of the Self Care Challenge this month. So, a huge shout out to her and the other participants of this month's Self Care Challenge as well. I think all of you may not all be mental health professionals, but have advocated within your own limitations, the essence and importance of emotional well being. So thank you for all of that, but specifically for today and sharing your knowledge with our viewers. I hope that you are able to make a program that is meeting your objectives and also adding to the knowledge and value of the community and citizens out there. Have a good
Thank you
evening,
so much. Thank you so much,
and I hope to
Neha,
see
for
you soon. My pleasure. Bye bye.